pray and pledge allegiance to the flag. Father, Lord, we thank you for blessing us to come out this evening to conduct the business of the county. Lord, we thank you for our nation, for our state. We thank you for the democratic process that we have. We ask now that you bless, Lord, the decisions that we make. Give us guidance and direction. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we thank you, and we call our meeting to order on May 20th. First item on our agenda would be the approval of the agenda and to make any adjustments that we might have. The first adjustment we want to make under item 5, where we have administrative reports. We have indicated there are none. We have 2 E&R board requests for refunds that we want to address tonight. And under item 8, under new business, we want to discuss the county commissioner meeting for July, which is currently scheduled for July the 4th, on potential dates for moving that meeting. So with those adjustments, we'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda as modified.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the agenda as modified.
Second.
All right, it's been motioned and second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Okay. Our next item on the agenda would be our delegations, citizens' comments. Do we have any? Okay, Mr. Earl Roundtree.
Earl Roundtree, Sunbury, North Carolina. Mr. County Manager, I'd like to say that I talked with the Chase over here to get a detailed explanation about our problems, and he explained it all to me and told me that he thought he had it worked out. So we won't be communicating on that anymore. We're trying to figure out what in the world was going on with not being able, if any of y'all had tried to get in the videos of our meetings. They stopped at February the 6th. And not being a technical person, I thought, well, we've been doing them. Is he living? So I left the other meeting and came in here to catch him to get a detailed explanation. And if I hadn't have been satisfied, I was going to hire my own consultant to come in here to go before y'all and explain it to you. The first thing I was going to say today hadn't got anything to do with the commissioners, but I just wanted to sort of make an announcement, and I don't know what I'm announcing. But I was approached last week, a week before last, I don't know when. At my age, it don't make no difference. I didn't want to do any more programs. I was behind in my fishing, and I figured the last 2 or 3 I'd done was successful, and I wanted to be like Joe DiMaggio and quit playing baseball when I was at the top and not the bottom. And I was approached about having a Veterans Day, countywide Veterans Day exponenza, whatever word that I can come up with, sort of like we had with the USS Annapolis for Veterans Day. And I'll tell you who brought it up to me. I hope it wasn't no secret, but my good friend Mickey Lee, and I just happened to run into him. And he said, I've been looking for you. And I said, what in the world? I thought he wanted to sell me something, and he did. He wanted to sell me on doing this project. But it is a project that I had in my mind I'd like to, wanted to do, but I will not. And I told him, I'm not going to take on any other projects unless I have some serious help. And of course, I'm assuming being Linda is a history teacher, but when we use the word, we have Memorial Day, and then we have Veterans Day, and it's sort of cross type thing. It's hard to say, but I assume Veterans Day means every person that's ever fought from the Revolutionary War to being in Iraq. So you're a veteran of Desert Storm or where have you, so it's going to enhance a lot of people in the county. But I hadn't been back with Mickey, but if anybody wants to guarantee that they're going to help. Now, I'm not talking about putting your name out here on a program and said that I helped when you didn't do anything, because we got a lot of people we need to contact. We got to have place to have it, big enough to have it, and all of that. But I just want to announce that to you. But I did want to make an announcement to Linda at the other end, because when I saw her, it made me think about this. I left two messages for someone in the Gates County Historic Society, and I didn't get any calls returned about that, because in the past, the Historic Society has done some things on Veterans Day, but I wanted to work together and not against each other. But if you when y'all have a meeting or you talk to the people, see what you think about this. As I was here the last time, we were talking about some economic development. A couple of things that's happened, and I sent an email to our county manager on some of this, and I don't remember all that I send him and what I don't send him, John. But Senate Bill 127, are you familiar with Senate Bill 127? It has passed the Senate. Now, the way it is in the House, I didn't get time to look it up today. I had a little business deal I had to take care of, and when it gets in my pocket, I take care of Earl first, and these things second, Jack. It's not the other way around. But the Senate Bill 127 is voted to dismantle the Regional Economic Development Commission. In other words, it won't be no more. If it passes the House and the governor signs it, it won't be anymore. Now, I was talking to one of the county commissioners all the way back in January, probably, in Currituck County. And he was I support 127 because I don't think these people have been doing anything. At least they haven't helped us any. And Currituck County was upset with them because Currituck had got some businesses to come in. These people showed up in the newspaper and said that they had got it. Well, that upset the commissioners because they said I won't even use the words he told me. But I think if it passed the Senate, it's probably going to pass the House. And this is just another thing that I say, Jack, that, that we got to look at this. And because we are not investing any of our money into anything of the future. And I'll give you a quick example, because I keep pointing to Jack because he was in this business for a long time. But he sold, after he left the service station and before he sold tires, he sold intangibles. And Jack probably will know how hard it is. It's harder to sell an intangible than it is a man with a flat tire, isn't it? The man with a flat tire's got to have a tire. The man you sell a retirement fund to or life insurance doesn't have to have it at that moment. And you got to convince him. And so it's always easy for so many of our citizens or either the county commissioners to look at and say, well, let's get through this budget. Well, as soon as we get through this budget, we start another budget. I said in here before, it's always budget time in government. But, if we're going to not have, we can't count on the state. The other thing is, and I think John and I had mentioned this, and he knows about it, and maybe you do, but the governor has proposed to actually do away with the Department of Commerce as we know it. And this is an old idea that goes back to 85 and on up. And they were going to and I can't explain this to any of y'all. Maybe John can do some research and explain it. But they're going to privatize the Department of Commerce so it would not be a government agency. Is that sort of what you understand? Do you even, like me, can't exactly explain it? But that's two big changes. One is to dismantle the Regional Development Commission, and the other is to change the Department of Commerce. And the reason I mention all these things is because I have told you before, and is that things have changed. And in Raleigh, and it makes us have to change, because we're not going to have these regional things to count on. And I think that, I never really figured out what the Albemarle Commission done. Somebody told me they serve Meals on Wheels. Well, that's great, but what else do they do? You know? And I'll throw this in real quick, because Linda's on the board of directors with the museum. But the museum was floating along over there with 20-some employees, and the state came in and says, we're going to cut funding, and we're going to have to close the museum down. So they got rid of several people. I think they got down to 13 now. Well, those 13 people in the last 2 years have done more work than the 20-some did in the year 2 or 3 years before that. And I know personally some of these people, and they said, wait a minute, I'm going to lose my job. And they have really put forth a major effort from all the way from Raleigh down to the museum. And so when you get in a bind, you got to look at things a little bit different. And I'll close with my 30-minute sermon by saying that, and to go back to Jack, being he was a salesman, and also Johnny used to sell satellites. Well, see, selling a satellite was fun because the people wanted them. They saw them. And you send Jack out there to sell a man a life insurance policy, and Johnny to show him some naked women on a satellite, and, you know, the woman might get mad and the man buys it. But anyway, and I know that to happen for a fact, the reason I mention it, because I know the man and woman stayed mad with each other about 6 months. But anyway, you know what, the point of this whole thing is that we have to sell Gates County. And this is something that we, in my opinion, going back, not criticizing this board, because we probably got a better board on this than we've had. We just hadn't done anything yet. But in the previous years, over the years, 40 years, Ray Felton and I preached this for 40 years, we're not selling the county. Jack and I met on it after he was soon elected, and we talked about website, not a Gates County website, but a website for selling the county. Johnny Hoare has mentioned to me many times, and it's quite true, what we have in Gates County to sell is our manpower, our personnel. When Lipton Tea opened up over 50 years ago, people started coming by in droves from Hobbswell and Tyner going to Lipton Tea to work. They didn't even hire the people from Hampton Roads. They hired them, the farm boys from Gates County. Union Camp, the same way. We had all of our good people were going to the shipyards. I say good people. To the shipyards and everywhere else. So we have a workforce here that we are more entrenched, the word native people, we're more entrenched toward working than a lot of other people. So we have a workforce. But we have to build on this, and we have to sell this idea to someone. And the reason I say all of this is let's assume right quickly that the Commerce Department stays the way it is. You're not going to get anything from the Commerce Department. I hope Jack learned this. I'm assuming he learned this as long as he sold insurance. Leads. That word means a lot to you, don't it, Jack? Leads. When I took sales, what did they tell me to do? You sell a man an insurance policy or a stock plan, and don't you leave without 3 names of his relatives or friends. When the last thing you do was to get those names. The Commerce Department will give you some leads as to what might come to Gates County, but they're not going to sell it to you for you. And you can guarantee you that McQuimans, Chowan, and Pasquotank, Currituck, and Camden are going to be out there with the same leads, and they're going to be selling it. And until y'all can figure out how to come out here and follow up on these leads, we're going to be right where we've been for 30 years. Last comment has nothing to do with this. I was in the meeting on the courthouse, talked to some of the people in here. I did never hear the word in there, voter referendum. And we discussed that, but I never noticed a word being said about voter referendum. So y'all keep that in your mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Earl. All right, our next item on the agenda is our administrative reports. And we have 2 from the tax department. The Board of Commissioners sat as the E&R board for the county, and we addressed the discussions that citizens had about their taxes and concerns that they had. And based on the discussions and the assessments by the board, it was determined that two of the residents were due refunds as a result of taxes being incorrectly charged for 2 years, or for the previous years, some being as much as 3 or 4 years. The total for one is $209.16, and the total refund for the other one is $128.40. And they've been presented to the board tonight to authorize the tax department to release those funds as a refund of overpaid taxes. So we'll entertain a motion to allow that refund to take place.
I make a motion that these refunds be permitted.
Second.
All right, it's been motioned second that the refunds be permitted. Are there any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda would be our public hearing for our 2013-2014 proposed budget. And we'll have also our first reading of the budget. And at this time, we'll entertain a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
All right, so motion second, and we'll go into public hearing for the proposed fiscal year budget of 2013-14. We're now in public hearing. Are there any comments from the citizens, departments, or whatever? All right.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
I just come for a couple of issues on the budget after reading the newspaper. So a couple of things that really concerned me about the new budget. One would be the merit increases for the county employees. We all know that our county employees are at the lowest pay rate of any county employees in the state at this point in time. And the merit raises, the merit increases is tied to their pay was put in effect to try to help keep that in place and keep the pay at a level that they could keep them going. We've got several employees that are probably and do qualify for food stamps in our county. For the last year or so, we've thrown a lot of money into our Department of Social Services for new jobs without considering the fact that how they affect the budget in the next year. It looks like at this point in time, it's going to fall on the backs of the county employees now to help cover for them jobs that we put in place last year. Also, the one that worries me the most is the fact that we're cutting the county's part to the rescue squad by 40%, some $10,000. When you start cutting your emergency medical services, that's a pretty dangerous thing to consider. I do hope that one of you or one of your family is not sitting waiting for a rescue squad, and that $10,000 makes a difference if they get there or not on time. I would like y'all to reconsider that. We determined last year that we were going to have a buku of money if we started paying down our debt early. And refinancing, we should have plenty of money. There should be money going back into the general fund. But all of a sudden this year, we're cutting budgets, we're cutting salaries, we're cutting our EMS. Next year, if we feel like that we need to pay a little bit more on our debt, maybe next year we can go away with the fire department or the rest of our EMS and maybe lay off some people by saving all the money that we've saved in the last 2 years. But anyway, I'd just like y'all to think about that. Our EMS and county employees, that they should be considered a little bit more and not have the cut on their back. Because it's their salaries and the fact that our EMS, I've been there, I've been waiting for an ambulance. I'm sure several of here have. And I would hate to think that that $10,000 or that 40% cut in our funds going to them could cause that ambulance to be mighty slow getting to me or one of you or your family. I would like y'all to think about that drastically. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is, to County Commissioners, County Manager, and Madam Clerk. My name is Barbara Yates. I live in Edenton, and I'm here to speak on behalf of Friends of the Tri-County Animal Shelter and Adoption Center, and another volunteer, Mary Jo Sellers, is also here with me tonight. I'll begin my comments by stating our overall goal for the shelter. A sustainable shelter designed and operated by industry standards that reflects positively on our counties and demonstrates responsible stewardship of taxpayer funds. Our group first appeared before you about 2 years ago, and at that time we outlined several initiatives we were planning that would improve shelter operations and begin to reduce the euthanasia rate. I am pleased to report that we have fulfilled all of those commitments. We have been successful because of our growing number of volunteers and our positive working relationship with the Shelter Advisory Board. Since our last visit with you, we have taken on several new initiatives, and I'll mention just a few that specifically provide a positive financial impact to the shelter and our counties. Since we cannot adopt our way out of the pet overpopulation problem, the primary mission of our group has been to move animals from the shelter to rescue groups or shelters in larger populated areas. I am pleased to report that since our efforts began 3 years ago, over 1,000 animals have been saved. We have raised in excess of $30,000 in what we call our assistance fund for this effort, and the benefit to the shelter adds up to a savings of several $1,000s in euthanasia cost alone. We have promoted and organized financial and material donations that have resulted in subsidizing the shelter's budget for food, equipment, preventive medicines, and other items needed to support a shelter operated by industry standards. In a moment, I will pass around a flyer we developed to solicit donations. Besides for the shelter, we have drop-off locations in Chowan and Perquimans, and we are on the lookout for a volunteer to set up a location in Gates. Thanks to our Shelter Enrichment Fund receiving designated financial and in-kind donations, play areas at the shelter have been created, which provide volunteers and potential adopters with large outside spaces to exercise and interact with the dogs. The project included fencing, rocks for ground cover, trees, and benches. Additionally, this fund has provided new signage at the shelter and on Route 32 to increase visibility. Our next projects will be to screen the incinerator and upgrade the cat cages. We already have a donation to cover the screening expense, and we've just received our first donation toward new cat cages. And I'll just mention one more effort. To promote adoptions, Mary Jo is at the shelter every week, taking photos to send to the newspapers in all 3 of our counties and the Daily Advance. Then she uploads the Pet Finder site. If you would like to know more about our work to improve the shelter and all of our other activities, our Friends group meets most every month, and our meeting notes are distributed to the commissioners and managers in all 3 counties. There are some projects that need to be done at the shelter, and we cannot do them all on our own. In the shelter's proposed 2013-14 budget, there is funding to replace the vehicle, catch up on one large maintenance item, and a few smaller ones. Plus, there are some expenses that Chowan has been funding, but will now be apportioned to Gates and Perquimans. I'll comment on a couple of the items, and I'll begin with the vehicle. Since Chowan has been providing a vehicle to the shelter without expense to Gates and Perquimans, when the insurance proceeds from the arson of the shelter's truck were received, the money went back to Chowan. The shelter needs to purchase a replacement vehicle, and $12,000 has been proposed in the upcoming budget, with the expense being shared by all of the counties. The shelter needs a dependable passenger van or extended cab pickup. Neither Chowan nor Perquimans has such a vehicle available, and if you do, I know I can speak for the other counties when I say they would be pleased to reimburse you for their portion of the cost. Otherwise, we will be out wheeling and dealing trying to find the best buy possible. The big maintenance item is the sealing of the kennel floors. In order to meet state requirements, the kennel floors must be sealed. In the past, and in an effort to save money, the job has not been done by experienced professionals that offer a warranty and have a track record of satisfied customers. One reason the price quote is now so high is that past mistakes must be corrected before new floors can be properly installed. The last time the floors were done, the material started to come up within 2 weeks. The $21,000 quote that is included in the proposed budget comes from a company that has a long track record and offers a warranty. The work would only cover what the state requires, the dog kennels, and does not include the office or cat room, which would be around $30,000. The shelter's director, Dana Goheen, plans to continue to contact other shelters who are satisfied with recent flooring jobs in an effort to find qualified contractors and obtain additional price quotes. Maybe there will be an opportunity to get the job done for less. I can assure you that all efforts will be made to do that, and if any of you have suggestions on how we can get a quality job with a guarantee at a lower cost, we are all ears. I will add that as soon as there is a commitment from the counties for this funding, our volunteer, Tina Pregel, who lives in Perquimans, will prepare an application for a $2,500 grant that is available to North Carolina shelters for maintenance and upgrades. There are a couple of other backlog maintenance and replacement items included in the new budget, but those costs are minimal compared to the floors and vehicle. I will point out a couple of expenses that are new to Gates and Perquimans: workman's comp and the cost of property insurance. Up until now, Chowan alone has been paying these expenses. In case you're thinking there might be some money in the shelter's basic budget that could be reduced to help fund the new expenditures, there's not. If it were not for the donations that Dana receives at the shelter and from her speaking engagements and the contributions made by our group, the shelter would not be able to continue moving in a positive direction. You may be pleased to learn about one expense that Gates and Perquimans are not being asked to fund, and it involves the inmates. We are very grateful that Chowan Sheriff Dwayne Goodwin is providing inmates to work at the shelter. Shelter staff occasionally transports the inmates, but most days they are transported by deputies, and those expenses are funded in the sheriff's budget, which means that Chowan County is footing the bill. Finally, I'll just mention one new initiative that will ultimately have a positive impact to the shelter's budget, and that is the new spay-neuter program. As of February 1st of this year, all adopted animals are fixed prior to the new owner taking possession. This will ultimately result in fewer animals entering the shelter and lower overhead expenses. I'll conclude my comments by saying that we believe that by catching up on the shelter's maintenance and eventually making improvements to the building, along with the new operational policies that have been implemented by Dana, and with our group continuing to subsidize the shelter's budget and fund animal enrichment projects, the end result will be a safe, welcoming, and functional facility that we can all be proud of. We hope that Gates County will maintain the partnership with Chowan and Perquimans, so together we can all continue to demonstrate respect for the taxpayer, shelter staff, and God's creatures. Thank you for your time and attention, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
All right. Did you say you had a flyer or a handout
I do.
for us?
It's the, it's what we pass around to try to get donations.
What have the inmate workers done for you most recently?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The inmate workers, what have they done for you?
Well,
most
the
recently?
inmates, Sheriff Goodwin pretty much has them there 5 days a week. They can't come on the weekends, but they're there 5 days a week, and they help with the cleaning of the kennels. They have spread rocks around. The rocks were out there because of the trenches that, from the trash truck that were made in the front of the shelter. They've done that. They've done some shrub work, trying to cut down some overgrowth. So they're they're there, and they help Mary Jo when she goes to take pictures to handle the dogs and get them in and out. So they're very useful, yes.
What is the capacity of the Tri-County Animal Shelter? How many animals can you house?
27 dogs and I believe about 30 cats.
Okay, what is the average population?
Full.
7 dogs and 30 cats.
So, you know, when Gates County gets a load of animals and we come over there and you all don't have anywhere to put them, and so we're left with a responsibility to do whatever we can do to try to take care of those animals.
Well, there is a process, and this is something that we would love to bring up at the Shelter Advisory Board meeting, is that if you know that you're going to go in and do an animal seizure, usually the police or the sheriffs know that a few days in advance. All you have to do is call Dana, give her a heads up. She will call Kim Album with the HSUS in North Carolina, Humane Society of North Carolina, or of the U.S., but they're here in North Carolina section. And Kim will come in with her mobile transport team and take care of everything at their expense. And we don't get involved at all. So the shelter has no impact. And the seizure that was made last week in Windfall, Dana had been over here in court on a horse case, which is another whole story, and she gets out of court and calls back to the shelter to be told that there's 28 dogs and 18 cats sitting there. That she knew. So then she's hustling to either euthanize animals or try to get these animals out. And gratefully, because she's so well connected to a lot of shelters, one phone call and the Virginia Beach SPCA took all these dogs. But yet, we have to vaccinate them. Our group pays for the health certificate that makes it legal to carry them across the state line. So all of that could have been avoided with just some notice, and HSUS comes in with all their mobile people, and it takes care of that whole cost.
So it's a good practice for Gates County to give you about a 3-day notice anytime we're going to make a seizure.
As much as possible. Kim, a lot of times, like the seizure that was made in Pasquotank recently, a couple of months ago, I think they had given Kim a 10-day notice because they were putting this case together. They knew they were going to be moving in. So it's the more notice, the better.
Okay. I guess the other thing that we kind of have questions about is the fact that we're supposed to be part owners.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think Clemens is part owner as of this time.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the deed should reflect that
Okay.
part ownership. But we're not, we haven't had access to it. We did want to review that, John. I think we'll take a look at that as well.
Okay, good. Okay.
So,
That was before our time, and I'm not really sure how all that came together, but I'll give Z-Lam a heads up that you're interested in that, so we'll be prepared at the next Shelter Advisory Board meeting.
well, especially since the fact that, I mean, if we're going to split the cost 3 ways, and we're part owners, and then you have one who's not part owner, you know, everyone it looks like is benefiting equally.
Well, but I think,
we're not having the same responsibilities.
but as I understand it, you all, the part that you're supposed to pay the third of are the capital improvements. But Z told me last week that when he figured up your portion for this year, that he didn't do it like that, that he took the budget and did it the way we normally do it with the rest of the budget, where it's apportioned according to population. So you're really paying the least amount of money into the shelter, and Perquimans pays a little bit more because their population, and Chowan pays the most. So again, all of these things can be, I think, worked out.
So, with what you just said, on population then, from a true cost aspect of total utilization of facility and those animals that go through there, what is the distribution ratio?
Well, it's about, I didn't bring that that breakdown, but it's Gateson's a little bit fewer than Perquimans, than Chowan, but it's not extreme. A few years ago, Gates sent in more animals than Perquimans one year. So it changes a little bit, but generally speaking, on the 3 years that we've tracked it, you're sending in 300-400 dogs.
Less.
No, not less, and then Perquimans is sending in maybe 400 to 500, and Chowan sending in 500 to 600. It's that kind of. But there are fewer animals going into the shelter, and the really good news
Right.
that in 2010, 2,100 animals were euthanized at that shelter. This past year, it's down to 1,400.
So, how much time is invested in each animal that goes through that process?
Okay, well, you know, there's a lot to learn about these animals, which
I
you know,
understand.
there's a lot of moving parts here.
Well, I don't know anything, so I'm listening.
If it is an animal that's adoptable, that's deemed adoptable, which means it's not aggressive, it hasn't bitten anybody, it's generally healthy, then it is, you know, they all try to receive the same, you have to hold them for a certain number of days unless it's an owner surrender. If an owner surrender, if someone comes in and owner surrenders their animal, she can put it down right then. You try not to, because sometimes the people come back. They change their minds. So if an animal's picked up a stray that has a collar, it's held for 3 days. Is that right, Mary Jo? I think it's 3 days. And then it's 5 days. And then, because they can't always hold them for 5 days. We do have, now that we have the play yards in the back, we have this lady, Tina Pregel. She is a certified animal trainer, and she's coming in to teach the staff, including the inmates, how to work with the animals. And she's also doing training, and whatever funds to the public, and whatever funds she makes from that, she's going to donate to the shelter. So it just all depends on what we've got. If labs, we can't say enough about the lab rescue up in Virginia. When those labs come in, we can generally, Mary Jo, we're moving them out, and we have our transport drivers, and we, the Friends Group, we pay for all of that. So it all depends.
So out of the total population that goes through there, then what is the amount that's euthanized versus what's adopted or whatever, would you say?
I would say when we first got involved, the dog euthanasia rate was, I think, around 65%, maybe a little higher. And now it is down to about 44% because of our efforts of getting them out. The cats were at like 98%, and that probably hasn't fallen that much because there's just cats everywhere. And AWARE is another group, Animal Welfare, the Albemarle, that offers low-cost spay-neuter to the public. So, and we're also with that group, and we've just started a low-income spay-neuter program, and we're looking into the state reimbursement low-income spay-neuter program. The last Shelter Advisory Board meeting, it was agreed that we would pursue that. And it doesn't impact you all. It's just the money's a pass-through, the reimbursement from the state, but it impacts you from the standpoint of having fewer animals to deal with.
Okay. On the vehicle that you mentioned, what is would be the normal mileage on that vehicle per year?
I don't know everything.
Maybe I'm asking too many questions, I'm sorry, but.
Yeah, she is, I'm going to,
The shelter is out and centered between the 3 counties, so it's not near anything. And in order just to go into the county office building, it's 16 miles one way. So 1 trip a day would be 32 miles a day. But that's not counting if she comes up here at court, or if she goes to Quinlan or something. You have to add all that in too.
So what kind of things are we utilizing this for?
Well, meetings, a vehicle for her, veterinarians, you know, to go to the vet's office, to move
food trip is,
So these prisoners, are they at Pasquotank?
no, they're from Terrell County. They're
Terrell
state
County.
prisoners, and they come into Edenton, and we worked it out with Sheriff Goodwin to drop them off. But, and a passenger van would be really the ideal, where she could take the back seat out, so she'd have a second seat for the prisoners when she does have to transport them, and then the back end could be used for animals. And I'll just give you an example of the animals she has to transport, is that when when the animal control picks up an injured animal on the road, they bring it to the shelter. It's her responsibility, if that animal is in pain, to get it stabilized. So she is running these animals to the vet's office to just get them stabilized. Now, I'll just mention to you that, because we're always looking for ways to save money, and a contract, we really need to be looking at in this shelter, a contract for emergency animal care, because right now, we don't have that. And so that's where we're paying not the going rate. So that's something that, where we could save a little bit of money. And in all honesty, it doesn't happen that often. I would say probably 6, 8 animals a year. Is that a good guess? Yeah, that are coming in under those. So she stabilizes them to see if the owner shows up, and then the owner decides. And when we go to look at these ordinance and all, there needs to be, in my personal opinion, where the owner has to reimburse the county for any of these medical expenses. So that needs to be, is something that could possibly be captured back. Not in every case, because if the owner doesn't come forward, then you're, that's that.
Ma'am, what kind of transportation is she doing now? You said something about the truck or something that,
Well, the truck, and we had 3 arsons in a matter of a couple of days over in Chowan. They burned a school, the truck. It was just a crime of opportunity.
yeah, I heard some of that.
And so the water department has given her a truck with 180,000 miles on it. That's a single cab truck that she has to put oil in all the time just to get her through.
No, better than nothing.
Better than nothing truck. That would be the one. So that's what she's using right now.
Mr. Chairman, can we have our manager to look in and see if we have anything that would help them a little bit better, that we're getting ready to get rid of, or a possibility of in the near future?
That would be great, because you could get your value on it, and we would reimburse you.
He's making a note of that. John's
Okay.
gonna look into that. Matter of fact, we talked about that a little bit as well.
Great, thank you. I was just looking here about,
Any other questions? Ms. Yates? All right, well, we
thank you. Thank you, appreciate your time.
For your information.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Yates.
you.
Okay.
Good evening. I wasn't sure of the process, and so I put my name down for comments, so you can just mark that part out. Let me first begin by saying how pleased we are with our new home. It's beautiful, and it's light and airy and roomy. We've still got some little quirks to work out, and don't ask me what's in the closets or the cabinets or the drawers. We still don't know where everything is, but on the whole, it's been a wonderful move for us at the library. We do miss the old building, though, even the bats. But we are looking forward to when that old building will be made living and useful again. When it was time to submit a budget to the county, John asked that we keep it under $100,000. Our appropriation for the current year is $95,000. Since we were moving into a space that's about twice the space as the old building, and we had no idea of the cost of electricity and other utilities, plus more computers and so on, we asked under $100,000, we asked for $98,000. When Gary, the regional director, and I talked with John a couple of weeks ago, John said that he was going to have, you were going to have to cut the budget down to $88,000. That's 10,000 less than we asked, 7,000 less than we've been managing on for the last year. We already know that health insurance costs will increase drastically. North Carolina state aid, which is where much of our book budget comes from, will be cut greatly. Additionally, it is a violation of the North Carolina Administrative Code to use state aid money for things like electricity and other costs of local libraries. The cost of electricity and other utilities will increase just because everything is more expensive now. And because we are in a larger facility with twice or more than twice the number of lights and computers, and we are now paying for 4 phone lines, we're guessing for more phone lines. We're guessing also that the county maintenance budget has been reduced because our cleaning force comes only once a week to clean twice as much space as they were coming on a twice-a-week visit. Needless to say, we're very concerned about the ability of the library to maintain the hours and the staff that we have now. It would be very embarrassing to have to cut the hours and the staff in our brand-new library in order to keep the lights on and the computers running. And of course, this doesn't even address the need to continue to purchase books and magazines and DVDs and other things that we use in the library. We've traveled a long, hard road in order to get this library built and occupied. It will be a sad day if we have to offer fewer services and programs than we did before. On behalf of the library staff and its patrons, I respectfully request that the commissioners revisit the library budget, and if it's not possible to give us the $98,000 that we've asked, please at least give us as much as what we have used and had in the current fiscal year. We can still tighten our belts a little bit. Betty Massey, the regional finance officer, has put together the appropriations for the last, well, since 2000, 2001, and we have not gone below 89,000 since 2007, so we've needed this money. And she's also given a copy, and I'll give you this for you all to make a copy, of the expenditures that we have up to date and the projected expenditures, and it will take the whole 95,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pamela. Any other comments?
Good evening, Commissioners, Clerk, County Manager, citizens of Gates County. I'm Chuck Brothers of 485 Drum Hill Road. I've got a couple of items on the current budget that's proposed that I want to compare and contrast with what the 2012-2013 budget proposal was, and I'll underscore the word proposal. I'll reserve the right to be corrected if any of these numbers were adopted, because of my inability to find out an adopted budget online. So this was the proposal of last year, so I don't know if these numbers were adopted or not, but that's what I had to compare and contrast. After looking at Mr. Mendenhall's budget, it became apparent that he has taken some expenditure lines and consolidated, or taken some expenditure lines and created new. And I'll bring your attention to what I'm going to say is the first 3 line items: the governing body, central administration, and financial services. In comparison to last year, the governing body had a total amount of $233,240. The misleading part about this expenditure line is it shows $66,387, which, if the average person did their homework and went back and looked at governing body, they would assume that to be salary. Salary looks like it has remained constant. So I just wanted to make that point aware that that is kind of a misleading figure to the public in regards to governing body and their salary, 66,387 versus 44,50. If you look deep enough into the budget, you'll see that that 44,050 is still a current number. But it does look like that financial services line item budget 11-4130 is a new line item that it looks like you could have taken two of last year's numbers, and now you've got three. So if you take and add all those together, you'll come up with the somewhat number of expenses, which in 2013 was 466,819. If you take those same numbers this year and add them together, you come up with roughly $485,000. So I don't know if those numbers correlate to COLA, which is cost of living increases, retirement. I don't know if those numbers, I didn't go that deep into it, but it does look like that, administration and financial services and some of those line items have increased. In regards to Ms. Familar's concerns, under the general services line item, which is item code 4260, 312-373, where utilities, fuel, and electricity, and this Ms. Familar has touched on the cost of doing business at the new library. Surely y'all would have taken into account that a new facility is going to cost more to operate than one that was been in place for the last 50 years. That line item is 20% less this year than it was last year, and we've moved into a new building that 2 weeks ago, and Ms. Familar can correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe 3 weeks ago I went by there and the ryegrass was heading out. So my comment to y'all is we have increased our capital exposure of a new enterprise that's away from our county seat, and we've decreased our building and grounds, or in this case, our general services, and we've increased our liability in what we have. So my question to that is 20%, 386, 872, and 1213 versus 312, 373 this year. I think that line item needs to be looked at. I don't think I, as a taxpayer, anybody else wants to see $1.5 million going up behind ryegrass. I'll commend Sheriff Webb. He put a little skin in the game. He took a 2% cut from last year to this year. One line item that really sticks out to me, and maybe the county manager can verify this after I make this. Emergency services, which is expenditure line 11-4330, $239,951. That's almost a 300% increase from last year, which was $78,067. We've got salaries and part-time salaries in that line item that I think that the public owed an explanation of the difference between $50,241 and $155,571, and part-time salaries of $28,000 versus part-time salaries of $65,500. That's way out in left field for me. Next item I'd like to bring attention to, and Mr. Twine brought this up, and obviously near and dear to my heart is public safety. It's a key component of quality of life. Graham touched on the fact that we've decreased the ambulance and rescue line item by 40%, from 25 to 15,000. Quick math, $25,000 and 12,000 people in the county, that's $2.50 a head that the county's saying that we're going to give y'all to provide that service. And you want to take it away, and basically what you're going to take away is what it costs them to buy their workman's comp. I see no absolute reason why that line item should be slashed. That's a huge reduction compared to what I see as other public safety entities that have huge increases, and one entity, Enterprise, that has taken a 2% hit. No disrespect to the animal shelter, I've adopted 3 dogs from there, and I love every one of them. But a 10% decrease from them from 50 to 45, and you're going to take 10,000 and 40% away from the rescue squad, those numbers don't marry up to me. We're too far left on one or the other. And then in closing, social services, got a 2% increase. Looks like schools got a 3%. And then we get back to Ms. Famelaw, 88,000, which is a 7% decrease from what they had last year of 95,000. There again, maybe Mr. Mendenhall can shed some light to maybe some more money has been put into that line item of general services that takes that $7,000 that she's lost into account. Overall, I think everybody that's involved in government, whether you're in North Carolina or Virginia, has got to have skin in this game and tightening up our belt to make the ends meet. But I think we've got a couple of line items that really need to be reviewed that are, I do not understand the numbers for the emergency services. I'm sure there's a fine explanation for that. But I do think our ambulance and rescue is out in left field, and if we've got money that we can expense out toward anything, I think our priorities to the taxpayer should be public education and public safety. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Chuck, any other comments?
Well, I don't have anything. I hadn't read the budget. I told y'all a year ago, that's one thing I'm not really worrying about. The only thing I got to worry about is paying my taxes. So I want to congratulate or comment to the fact that I think the board did an excellent job so far of what I've seen. It's probably the best thing that I've ever seen this board do as a whole was hiring John Mendenhall. The question is, John is county manager, and you've been close to county managers, as whether or not you're going to be able to maintain that in another budget hearing. But as a taxpayer in this county, and I've been coming to these meetings, and we were talking about Mr. John Willie, and I'm going to speak for Mr. Willie because he can't come tonight and probably never be able to come to another one, but I can assure you he would be here tonight and have a long recitation about how to conserve money. But I want to congratulate the John Mendenhall for putting together a budget that doesn't raise taxes. And no disrespect to no one here, but y'all have been through this process before. Kenny has been on it more than anyone else. Everybody's got so many needs. And if we did a budget in the state or the county, it would be like Washington, D.C. That bunch up there give everybody what they want, and that's why we got a multi-trillion-dollar debt. But we can't do that down here. And I support the commissioners, and I support the county manager that we got a balanced budget. Now, there may be some numbers that need to be jiggled around. But I think, and John, and I don't know if it was phone conversation or email, but I think it was phone. So Pastor Tank started out, Randy Keaton, who's leaving, but he started out and they were looking at a 4 to 5 cent tax increase. Well, the county commissioners threw a lot of cold water on that real quick. And a lot of that was coming from the fact that they wanted to do pay raises. And the county commissioners now say that they're going to get by the last news with a 1 cent difference. So you have to do these things, and I just think that me as a taxpayer and others out here want to congratulate for the fact that behind you and the fact that you can't do everything that needs to be done. And if you start giving everybody all the money we want, the tax rate would be $3. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Earl. Anyone else?
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I got to congratulate Mr. Earl Roundtree saying that I'm glad to see Mr. Mendenhall. I think he's number one here with us. Keep up the good work. My question is to the commissioners, especially Mr. Jordan, Mr. Owen, and Mr. Jernigan. This excludes Mr. Horr and Ms. Hoffler, I'm sorry. We talked about, with the grant money, 50 people of employed out here at the Commerce Center. I would like somebody to explain why we got, I think now we're going to pay that money back that we got for grant money because we did not hire the 50 people. Is that true or not true? Are y'all with me on that?
Well, that's not true at this time, but we do want to keep this in the public hearing for the budget. I don't believe that's a budget item per se, because we have not expended any funds or appropriated any funds to pay that clawback. The county is not on the hook at this time for the 50 jobs not being produced or whatever. That is part of an economic development that's not completely addressed at this time, and it is still a closed session discussion. So we wouldn't be able to, divulge a lot of information on that for two reasons: because this is a public hearing for the budget, and because it is a closed session item.
Okay, I'm sorry about that, but anyway, last thing about that, I think the cutoff date was the 15th of this month. That right or wrong?
Not that I'm aware of. And like I said, we want to keep this to the comments to the public hearing for the budget. If you want to discuss that later in the meeting as a citizen's comment, we could do that, but this is for public hearing for the budget.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? All right. If there's no one else, we'll entertain a motion to come out of public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we come out of public hearing for the 2013-14 budget.
Second.
All right, we have a motion second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. All right, we have before us proposed 2013-14 budget. We have designated that this would be the first reading of the budget. But before we go into the reading of it, we want to open it up for comments from the commissioners on any thoughts they might have. I would like to say to the board that I agree there should be some adjustments in the various line items. I would propose, and I'm not making this a motion, but I'm proposing this for thought, is that we would take $50,000 out of our debt payment appropriation and have our county manager look at addressing the senior nutrition program, the library, the rescue squad, the health department, and the animal shelter, and to divide those funds. I wouldn't want to dictate as to how much to give each one, but to take those particular items and provide some adjustments based on what that $50,000 could do. That would be my proposal and recommendation. Anyone else?
Well, Mr. Chairman, the conversations that I had with people during the last 2 weeks addressed some of the same, not all, but some of the same services and departments that you referred to. I hadn't thought about a dollar amount. I had thought about something out of debt service, but I had not zeroed in on a dollar amount. But I thank the people who did call me in regard to their concern for some specific departments.
John?
Well, this is a budget. It's not an actual. There's a difference between budgets and actuals, and it's called accountability. I've dealt with these things all my life since I got out of college. And it's a tool. It's a management tool, nothing else. And it's sort of like you're giving your kid an allowance, and he goes out and you can give him $10 or you can give him $15. Well, a lot of times when you give him 15, he's going to come back, 15 is going to be gone. So the thing about it is being accountable to your documentation and keep it, and you come back and you ask for more money. If you would not be a wise parent that you put it all on the table at one time. And these things that we're talking about here do need to be addressed, and we'll talk about them, but it's not a life and death situation. It's a management tool. All of us approach those every day, for lunch money. When you walk up to the counter, you decide whether you want one of these huge hamburgers or you want a small hamburger, what kind of diet you're on, and how cost effective you are. And what Mr. Raintree had to say was very true. That's what the problem that we have in this country today. And every corporation is going through that same thing. And why are corporations doing well today? Because they have become lean and mean. And how did they do that? Well, they cut out all of the fat. And a lot of times when you have a full pocket, it's very easy to let them turn it loose. It is very difficult to teach young people to be conservative with their expenditures that they do and match those up with the revenue stream that they have. And I think John and Sandy have done an excellent job of trying to do this. Everybody's going to have some pain. We're going to stretch this out some more, but this is something that we as Americans need to get used to. I can tell you that, big time. The monetary policy that we own in this country today is not helping anybody. We're in serious, serious trouble on our monetary policy, and especially senior citizens. It's just not there. It's not going to happen. And so this is an attempt, and I'm on board. You want to make sure that people have the thing to provide the services and all, but you do have to be looking at what you're doing overall. And I think John and Sandy done a good job doing that. We did some smart things last year to do this, as Graham alluded to, but you still have to continue that every day until you change your culture. The culture needs to change. And to be successful, you have to do that. And it's tried and proved. What actuarial science will tell you that. And the only way you do that is the pyramid growth, and it will grow if you put those, it's just like math. 1 and 1 is 2, 2 and 2 is 4. It don't change, never. So we're going to look at this, and I think some of these numbers we are going to juggle around and try to do that, and I'm on board with what Henry said. How they're going to shake out, we don't know. But just keep the comments coming, because if you don't comment, nobody's going to listen to you. So appreciate you being here.
Kenny?
I'd like to say that we've already talked about this being this budget, and we talked about the different departments that weren't going to get exactly what they wanted. But we also talked about coming back and looking at it at a later date. Does the library need this full amount? Or it might need a little bit more, or it might need a little bit less. Same way with the rescue squad. They might need a little more than 10,000. to make out at the end of the year. And we still got to come back to look at that if they ask. And I've had telephone calls from several of these different departments. And I told them, I says, remember, this budget is a proposed budget. This is what we'd like to see you stay at if possible. But don't be afraid to come back and ask us for additional monies if you cannot make it with this. Talking about the rescue squad, Mr. Jack Boyce called me. He was fired up. And I'm sure some of the rest of the commissioners felt that same way if they talked to him also. But in the last part of the statement, I told him, I'm talking to him, I told him, I said, Jack, you need to calm down a little bit. I said, I'm going to still stay your friend. I'm not going to get mad with you. I said, I don't want you mad with us. We want you to come back and ask for this money if you feel like you have to have it. And at the end of the conversation, he told me, he said, well, we're doing some things and we're looking at maybe saving $10,000 on our own and some things that they're already going to do. Well, I'm not going to say that's going to fix his whole problem. But he explained to me right then that maybe he didn't need that full $10,000. This was what goes back to planning a budget. You might not stay in it. Our sheriff sits back there. He's going to, and I guarantee you before the end of the year, he's probably going to come back to us asking for some more money. So this is something that, this is not the first time this has happened, and it won't be the last. And it won't be the last time that they come back and ask for additional monies.
All right, Commissioner Officer?
Oh, well, I do thank the people who have called and stopped me on the street to ask me about the budget. It has been a learning process for me as well. But I think as we looked at it, we always are looking for more ways to be more efficient. And in this budget, we do have some efficiencies that we have come by. And if you've looked at, we have tried to reorganize some of the departments and reducing the number of departments in an effort and looking at all ways to save money. So that is, you know, I think hopefully you can see that. You might not see it in these numbers, but we are trying to look at things that we can do and work with, you know, the school system and the county doing things jointly and not duplicating services. So we are very, we're looking at it with these numbers very carefully so that we make sure we get the most bang for our bucks. Because I'm a taxpayer too, just as you all are. Certainly, I love the library. The rescue squad has been to my home a couple times in recent years for my mother. When you need it, you want it there. But concerning the library, I would think there should be some savings in energy. It certainly should be more energy efficient than the old one. So, you know, there's some room to play with some numbers, but, you know, we'll just have to see how it works out. And I agree, I'd be supportive of Mr. Jordan's efforts. But I think Mr. Mendenhall and Ms. Pittman have done an excellent job preparing this budget. And it's something, like you say, it is a proposed budget. Certainly, it's not written in stone. There can be some adjustments made during the course of the year.
All right, thank you, Board. At this time, we're going to ask the county manager to do the first reading, which I guess it will be an abbreviated reading. And I might add that the budget that was proposed was under the direction and discussions of the county departments and the commissioners. So I agree, county manager's done a great job, and we want to commend him and Sandy for the budget that was put forth. All right, county manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I want to give you a brief reading of the budget. I will start with revenues and move to expenditures. Total general fund revenues of $10,149,754. A sustainability fund has been created for $70,679,000. Automation fees of $5,000. Emergency 911 system telephone surcharge of $118,395. Fire protection fund of $260,000. a tax revaluation reserve fund of $33,750, a USDA reserve fund of $18,320, a debt service fund of $1.5 million, a capital improvement program fund of $200,000, a vehicle and equipment asset fund of $55,000, a water and sewer enterprise fund of $1,086,500, a solid waste fund of $773,700, a transit fund of $621,048. Total revenue of all funds, $14,892,146, and expenditures in the general fund of $10,149,754, sustainability fund of $70,679, a register of deeds automation fund of $5,000, an emergency 911 system fund of $118,395, fire protection fund of $260,000, a tax revaluation reserve fund of $33,750, a USDA revaluation reserve of $18,320, a debt service fund of $1.5 million, capital improvement program fund of $200,000, vehicle and equipment asset fund of $55,000, water and sewer fund of $1,086,500, a solid waste fund of $773,700, and a transit fund of $621,048, for total expenditures of $14,892,146,000. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this is a balanced budget.
We thank you, John, County Manager, for that. Again, this is the first reading. We will have our second reading and adoption at our June 5th, 2013 County Commissioner Board meeting. And at that time, we will also receive any comments based on our new proposal. I made a recommendation earlier, and we would need to give the county managers some guidance and direction in that by way of a vote, and making a motion. And the motion would be that we would reallocate $50,000 from our debt payoff fund to have the county manager look at senior nutrition, mental health, I'm sorry, not mental health, but senior nutrition, library, rescue squad, health department, animal shelter, and the Gates Partners for Health.
Mr. Chairman, I find that maybe difficult, because you've named several departments, and you named a dollar amount, and I don't know if are you talking about for him to make considerations or to spend the dollars?
Well, to utilize them over those identified departments.
What if the county manager does that? I mean, he's working on a budget that he's been working on. What if he does that and he sees that we need to spend, I'm just concerned about the motion. And he says, I see where maybe we need to spend $32,000, and we've told him to use 50. I mean, he may want to come back with a different recommendation rather than spending the full 50.
Right. Well, we don't have to say he has to spend the 50, but we would authorize him up to 50 with that.
And that'll be something that we'll get the opportunity to debate again.
Certainly.
On the budget. Okay. All right. Just before you made your motion, I just want to get clear.
Have we closed that library capital fund yet?
No, sir, we have not. That fund is still open.
How much longer do you think it's going to be before we do that, John?
I have talked with the finance department, and we believe that it should be coming to you in June at the earliest, but probably more like July. There is a payment outstanding. There needs to be some reconciliation done, and we need to close it out. There's a packet in the spec book that calls for different procedures for the closeout lien waivers and so on and so forth. We need to make sure all that's done, and we'll give you a final reporting between June and July.
Are we still on track for what we were talking about a couple months ago, or close to it?
Very close to it. It may be somewhat improved.
Okay.
All right, I've quoted the motion. Do we want to put that motion forward?
Can we have a restate?
All right,
Is it gonna be your motion or you?
well, I'll make the motion. Okay. I make a motion that we direct the county manager to look at up to $50,000 in reallocation towards the senior nutrition line item, the library, rescue squad, health department, animal shelter, and Gates Partners for Health. And to distribute those based on his judgment of what the assessed needs would be.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion, second on the floor, in discussion. All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed, nay. All right. And we will have another review on our June 5th meeting prior to adoption. All right, our next item, agenda item would be our old business, which is none. New business, we have a county commissioner meeting scheduled for July 4th.
Third.
July 3rd? Okay, I'm sorry, not July 4th, okay. Which is the day before July 4th, and it would be better if we move that. Some suggested dates have been July 10th, which is the following week. We do want to keep in mind that we are supposed to have a night meeting on July the, what is that night meeting?
Calendar.
Is it the
22nd.
15th?
15th?
Is it the third Monday night?
It'd be the third Monday night.
Is that the 15th?
So can we,
Have one meeting.
Hmm.
Well, if we had one meeting, it's going to be, it would have a heavy agenda. And if we did it at night, it would really be, we'd probably be getting out of here 11 or 12 o'clock.
sounds like Tuesday the 2nd then? Anything wrong with Tuesdays?
What do you say, Ken?
I don't have a problem with Tuesday.
Tuesday, 2nd?
I have to check, see if the court calendar is free that week, but I can check.
Could we have, could both July meetings be night meetings? That would
Well-
make it easy on the court calendar.
You mean on the 10th? Because,
On the 2nd.
I'd hate to have a 10 and then come back on the 15. We don't need to do that.
Yeah.
I was thinking the 2nd and the 15th, both night meetings.
well, like I said,
Sounds
you're going
good
to
to
be
me.
getting out about 11 or 12 because that's all departmental reports. That's the full meeting, closed sessions and whatever. So if you're going to do that, you probably want to start early in the afternoon. Or have it during the day. And Tuesday night's not a good night for me.
Oh, okay.
I can do Tuesday.
Well, Monday night's a good night.
Monday night, what is that, July 1st?
July
Yes, sir.
1st.
I guess that's a good night.
Obviously, I'm a person that likes the night meetings, as most people know.
All right, but I would suggest that
Start at 6.
we'd start
5:30,
probably
6.
5 o'clock, or,
Sounds good. You want a motion?
well, let's see what the clerk has. Monday night,
Monday night the 8th,
the 1st,
the 1st?
July 1st.
July 1st, 5 o'clock. Court closes is what time?
It should be through then.
Okay.
Bye.
All right, we'll entertain a motion.
And I'll
July
make a
1st.
all right, I'll make a motion that our July 1st meeting scheduled for July the 3rd be moved to July 1st at 5 o'clock p.m.
Motion?
Second.
Our motion is second that our July county commissioner meeting be moved to July 1st at 5 p.m. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed, nay. All right. Okay. Comments? We have no citizens' comments. Commissioners? Any comments, further comments?
I'll go first.
All right.
It's good to be here. Thank you for your input on the budget. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Very good.
And same here, and like I said, I like people calling and talking about that, but it is true, and I love budgets, and they are a management tool. But in my whole career, believe me, I never saw one that came, they were balanced when they went out to the management people. But guess what? At the end of the year, I never saw one that had 0-0 on both sides. It never worked. It just don't work. It never happens. Although I did have one year, it came within $5,000 out of about 50-some million dollars. Now, that's unbelievable, but it did. So it is a working process, and I think Kenny said it very well, that, hey, believe me, if I've got $1 and you show me a real need and you're accountable for what you're doing, and it's documented, I'm gonna do everything in my power to help you get there. Everything I can possibly do. And anybody that knows me, I will carry the ball. And, but it does it takes teamwork, and I think that everybody does have to share in the game. And we're going to get down, we're going to get through it. Next year, it'll be another process. And end of the year, you sit back and wonder, well, what in the world happened? Thank you.
I'd just like to thank everyone for coming tonight, and it looks like everybody has stayed. And I'd just like to say thank you.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming, and, you know, the state of North Carolina does require us to have a balanced budget. So, well, unlike the private sector where we can fudge, we have to have a balanced budget.
All right. I kind of piggyback on what Commissioner Hopper says. Counties, unlike the federal government, have to have a balanced budget, and we thank God for that. I do, once again, think that we have a great budget that's been presented to us. We are making some adjustments, and that's a good thing. I do want to address the question that came up during the public hearing about the 50 jobs. There again, anytime that we are doing economic development and there has not been a completion of a process whereby if information to get out, it could jeopardize that project or the business owner, we cannot discuss that. We're not allowed by law to discuss it. We could get in a lot of trouble as commissioners if we start discussing information that is not to be publicly disseminated prior to the right time. But I will say that as of now, the county is not in a position whereas we have any immediate liabilities, and certainly our county manager and the commissioners, we're vigilant and diligent in this process of trying to make sure that the county gets what we've tried to bring to this county and bring about economic development without putting the county into a bad position, if you will. So we appreciate the concern. We appreciate the comments. We thank everyone for coming, and have a great evening. Thank you. All right, we do have closed session, and we're going to entertain a motion to go into closed session at this time in accordance with North Carolina General Statute 143, 318.11, A3, A4, and A5. And A6.
So move.
Second.
All right, been moved and second. Go into closed session. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion second, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. All right, we're back in open session, and we have 3 items we need to address. The first item would be to authorize the chairman to sign the document discussed in closed session.
So move.
Second.
All right, so motion second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. All right, the second item was to authorize the county manager to make the personnel, or implement the personnel reclassifications or adjustments that was discussed in closed session.
So move.
Second?
All right, so motion second, that we authorize the county manager to move forward in making those personnel adjustments. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. All right, the third item was to authorize the sheriff's department to implement the revised position discussed in closed session.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so moving second, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. All right, that concludes our agenda items. If there are no further items, comments, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second?
All right, motion second, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
You want these back on that end, John?